Welcome to the GreenCourt Connections Podcast. I'm your host, Jay Bland, Chief Growth Officer here at GreenCourt. GreenCourt Connections exists to help connect our listeners on a deeper level with the hardworking folks that work in and interact with government agencies and court systems. Really excited about the episode we have today. A lot of history goes into this episode. Our guest today is Sheila Studdard, who's the Clerk of Superior State and Magistrate Courts in Fayette County, Georgia. And not only is she an incredible person, but she was the first GreenCourt customer of all time. So 10 years ago now, 2014, Sheila and her office were the first folks to give us an opportunity to do business. And we're going to have a lot of fun reminiscing on those times today and talking about what Sheila has done to make her office in Fayette County one of the most innovative offices in the state. So Sheila, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see you, Jay.
It's good to see you. I've sat in that office many times. There's a lot of things in that office that mean a lot to both of us. There's a Frisbee behind you. And I think everybody will be able to see that Frisbee. Yep, there it is. So when we talked about e-filing, the best way we could explain it was Peach Court will throw a Frisbee and the clerk will catch it, right? That makes a lot of sense. That's really e-filing in a nutshell. And that commemorates the very first e-filing, correct?
That's correct.
December 2014.
That's right.
We don't look a day older.
None. Not a bit. Not a bit. No. Yes. This was awesome.
You were sitting in that seat. I was sitting in the law firm's office down the road. I believe it was Meredith McClure's office, right?
Correct.
I was sitting with their staff when they submitted the first one, and I remember thinking, please, God, work. Please just work.
I think we were all saying that.
And it did. And now Peach Court has processed over 10 million legal documents.
It's unbelievable.
First one was you sitting right there, and now there's been 10 million documents filed electronically. But we owe all that to you for giving us a chance. There's, by definition, only 2.5% of certain markets are innovators. That's a very small percentage. And when you're in the software business like us, you spend your time looking for those innovators, because those are going to be the people who give you the opportunity to do business. The people who don't mind being on the cutting edge, they actually prefer it. And that's you. And you're doing so many cool things in that office, and you have for a long time. But before we get into that, I want to back up. And this part of this segment is going to be called From Cop to Clerk, because your story is a very interesting one. You went from a police officer right here in Atlanta, where I'm sitting, for I think about 10 years, right?
That's correct. And
then clerk of court. So please walk us through that. Walk us through your time as a cop, and then walk us through that transition to be the clerk of court.
Well, it kind of even goes back before that. There's a time where I didn't know really what I wanted to be. I was good at math, good at science. So I actually started my time at Georgia Tech, and I was studying ceramic engineering. In my senior year, honestly, I was thinking, what am I doing here? Why am I even here? We've been to the moon. We've done things honestly, I'm sitting there thinking we've done everything we're going to do. And I couldn't see myself in an office setting, and I needed to get out of this. And I had friends who were on the police department, and I'm thinking, man, wouldn't that be fun? The Atlanta Police Department was in a hiring freeze. I went down and applied. I was number 782 in the list.
Wow.
So about a year and a half later, I got called for an interview, and I dropped out in my senior year and became a police officer in the city of Atlanta. And so there, I graduated from the academy, got sent to Zone 3 Morning Watch. Well, for those of you who aren't watching, but Zone 3 is the downtown stadium area. McDaniel Glen is where I was stationed. And I did that for 5 years. I had the first 11 blocks of Stewart Avenue, now Metropolitan, but it'll always be lovingly Stewart Avenue to me. And after that, I got promoted to a detective, went to robbery. We had the Olympics. After the Olympics, the city decided they had a carjacking issue. I got assigned to the carjacking squad. Well, I was the carjacking squad. But late 1999, there was a young boy who was taken in a carjacking. He was 3 years old. And that little incident there was a major incident to me. And the little boy was returned safely. We got the perp that night. The mother was safe. Everybody was safe. And when I went to prosecute this particular case, it was textbook. There was everything I had. I could just lay it out. And cases that I had like that, I would typically prepare them for federal prosecution. But to do that, you had to prove that the defendant was a felon in possession of a firearm. So you go to their criminal history. Well, as you know, criminal histories at that time was not anything that could be pulled very easily. You had to go to the courts. And when I called and said, "This is Detective Studdard, this is my situation, this is what I need a copy of this final disposition," I got zero help. And I just couldn't understand it. And who doesn't help a 3-year-old? And the response I was getting is I needed to come do that criminal search by myself in the office. And I said I wasn't doing a search. I knew exactly which document I needed, but it was too much trouble, whatever. And so I asked these people who they were, and they were the Clerk of Superior Court. And that didn't mean anything to me as a police officer, and I didn't understand it. And, while I was in college, I worked at Kmart and I was a clerk. So I thought, shoot, I can do that. How hard can that be? So asking around, I asked who was the Clerk of Superior Court, and I found out, who it was. And I'm thinking, that's the person who sent subpoenas to police officers to come to court. And I'm like, a subpoena lady is easy. How hard can that be? So the next thing I found out myself doing was inquiring how to become the subpoena lady. And here I sit before you 24 years later as the subpoena lady. And I find out that this is not just subpoena, and nor is it like Kmart.
No, but sometimes it really feels like it. But yeah, and you're so much more than the subpoena lady. That is, we've talked a lot, but I haven't really heard that story from beginning to end. I've heard pieces of it, and we spend most of our times talking about some of your stories when you were a cop. Mm-hmm. Some of which probably aren't great for this podcast, but they are very entertaining. They are very entertaining. So yeah, so when you had that case with a 3-year-old, you weren't a mother yet then, right?
No, I had not had my son, but there's some things that are very dear to police officers, and that's people who can't defend themselves. And we're talking elderly, children, and animals. Yep. And so you cross those lines and we get really protective. Most of us do. And so we kind of feel like that's our job as an officer, is to speak up and take care of those who can't take care of themselves. And so, and I took it personal. I always have taken my job very personal. And so, I was going to do my absolute best to put that bad guy behind bars for as long as I could. And I always thought that, if I could do it federally, then they would at least not get out before I retired. Mm. So I would average anywhere from 15 to 20 years as a sentence. So I knew I'd be gone when they got out. So hopefully I wouldn't have been around in the Atlanta area when they got out. Hopefully they wouldn't come back looking for me.
Now your constituents are probably some of the people that maybe you put away.
I hope not.
So now we just so everybody knows, Sheila has a son named Jack. My son's name is Jack. So we have that connection, in that we picked the greatest name of all time for our
Absolutely. Son. Absolutely. And so, yeah. And, God works in the most mysterious of ways. He brought me down here, put that star in my heart to be here. And, you know, and I know it was God who put me here because I was so ignorant of the office. And it came in and absolutely knew nothing. You know, I was going to be the subpoena lady, right?
Right.
You know, there's so much more to this office than subpoenas, as you know, and as I've learned. And it has worked very well for me, but I think that it just has because this is what God has ordained.
And some hard work in there. I mean,
Very hard.
now you are the person, you know, a lot of clerks label you as their mentor, some of the new clerks. And when they have a question, when it comes to reading code, I'm a lawyer, and this lady right here can read code better than I can. And she can cite it, and she can tell you where it is, and she can tell you the purpose behind it. And it's amazing to see, you know, what you can do with some God-given and created opportunities, but hard work. I mean, you're curious, and when it's time to figure things out and educate yourself, you do a great job at that.
Well, thank you. And there was many a night that I stayed here because I didn't yet have Jack. And so after the day was ended and everybody had gone home, I had made notes of what happened that day. And as clearly I didn't understand it, so I would go pull the code sections and I would read and find out, what did today mean? What was it that was happening? And I'm very curious. I want to know the why, because if I understand why it's happening, then I'm better at doing it for you and helping you.
Right. So we talked about Georgia Tech for a little bit. We talked about police department, and then obviously being the clerk of court. But let's back up before that. When you were a kid and you were thinking about what you wanted to be when you grew up, what was that?
I didn't really have that thing. You know, I was always in trouble for talking. So I knew that I needed a job that allowed me to talk. Yes. So it was I was good at math and science. So, you know, I thought that I might want to be a teacher. And, you know, that still may be in the cards for me one day. Not sure.
Yeah.
You know, I like, even when clerk world, when there's an opportunity to teach, I truly enjoy that. So I enjoy that. And so who knows?
Yeah, you're not scared of the stage, and you're not scared of the microphone, even though you don't need one.
I don't need one, and I'd rather not use one. I'd scare most people when I get a microphone.
So when you look at your career as a clerk so far, you know, we've all been impacted by people who helped kind of shape us into the leaders we are today. But who has been the most impactful mentor to you? Who's somebody that comes to mind?
Well, I've been very fortunate that there have been so many people that have come along that have wanted to help. But the one person that stands out most is David, my husband. His family were involved in politics before I married them. And his mother worked on Ronald Reagan's campaign back in California when she was in high school. She worked for most senators and congressmen here in Georgia. So when I announced that I wanted to be a clerk and perhaps this might be something for me, she was like thrilled beyond. And so, and Jay, you know me, politics is not my best forte. I do speak my mind. And so a handler is what I need. And David has always been there to help guide me through those very difficult political pieces, because I tend to tell people exactly what I think. And it's hard. And it took me a long time to find the delicacies and, you know, how to say that without actually hurting their feelings.
Right.
And coming from a police officer, when you have to be very direct and not taint the command at all, to coming to this world where that's not needed. That's not the tone or the experience anybody needs, nor do they want. It was a very difficult transition for me. And every now and again, Sheila arises. We try to keep her at bay best we can. But I have learned that running things by David, he's been in this world a lot longer than I have, in the political world. That's what I mean, the political world. And, he understands what I'm facing. And he, having lived in this community his entire life, he knows the players better than I do. And so he's helped me avoid some landmines that I probably could have set off.
Yeah. I enjoy David a lot. He's a good man and a good lawyer, and obviously a great husband.
And he's very tolerant. And, when I was spending all of that time at the Capitol trying to get the enabling legislation passed for e-filing, not one complaint. I mean, he just rolls with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, I remember those sessions, 2016, 2017, 2018. I felt like I was a politician as much as we were up there. I mean, every day, goodness gracious.
Back it up to 2006 when I started that, it was a long haul.
Yeah, that cafeteria gets old quick. and there's nowhere to go down there.
No, and you got to be there.
You got to be there. I was talking, actually, Ryan,
yes,
our president here at GreenCourt, he and I were just talking, and we were talking about an opportunity we have in another state. And we both were talking about, hey, you just show up and you keep showing up, and then you show up some more, and then you see if that matters, right? You see if that matters.
Right.
And I have never gone through a situation with state or county government where showing up didn't matter. I think it's important.
Showing up is essential. Just being there. Yeah. You can't be part of the discussion if you're not at the table.
That's right. And Sheila, you actually came to one of our child support conferences a couple of years ago and spoke, which was at NCIA, which I'm on the board of that organization now, and it's an awesome organization. And
congratulations.
Thank you. You kind of met some of the folks in the child support world, and you talked about what being a clerk means. But we have a lot of listeners of this podcast that they're government agencies, but they rely on the court system. But they don't really have a good idea about what clerks do. So I'd love to give you an opportunity from a high level to talk about, what is the clerk's main responsibility? What do clerks care about? What do clerks worry about? Just give us the whole clerk spiel.
Well, from a high level, the clerk's main responsibility is we are the custodian of the records. That's it. Having it, filing it, having it accessible to the court, to the parties, and to the public, so that its integrity is not diminished. It's there for whomever needs it. So that's the function. Now, there are so many other nuances that go with the job. You've got mandates that are put on us. We have, deadlines and transmits here and there, and, what we can and cannot say to people at the counter, and, can't give legal advice. But do I know the process? Yes. But, I'm not an attorney. I'm just the clerk,
right.
And it's so hard to help these people when I have to say, I'm sorry, I'm just the clerk. I filed the document. You have to go get an attorney because your situation may be so different than anybody else's. And those differences are going to make a difference in what gets filed in your case.
Right.
So what were else? Wait a minute. You've had so many strings of questions there.
So from high level clerk's responsibility, yes, you nailed that. What do clerks worry about? When what keeps you up at night?
Okay, the first thing that I need to let y'all know that every clerk's office is different, and it's a living, breathing organism. And so every clerk has the same responsibility, and every clerk has the same duties by code. But we have different resources. We have different players in each one of our jurisdictions. So that's going to interact with us, and it's going to make it different. So we are different entities And that's why, Jay, when you come to a clerk's office, you have a different experience. Yep. Because we have different, it's a different living being. And so, but that doesn't change that we have to worry about, are we making our mandates? We worry about the legislation that just got passed. Do we have the resources to implement that legislation? Every clerk worries about budget season. Are we going to get what we need? Do we have the resources to get through the next year? What's going to come this next year? None of us are forecasters, and none of us have a crystal ball. Neither do our commissioners. Yep. So we just do the best we can with what we got. And based on our history and trends, we make a forecast for what we need for next year. All of that to say that we want to provide the very best customer experience for everyone who uses our office. Right. So, and then put into that, every clerk has their own special passion. And so each clerk has something that is, driving them. And so with me and that 3-year-old, I've never forgot that 3-year-old, and why I'm here is criminal histories. So that has been a driving force for me, is to make sure that my criminal histories are done daily, they're done on time, and that we don't have a problem in Fayette County with criminal history reporting. And so that we stay on top of that. And, I've had people accuse me of being the GCIC police of Fayette County. Well, yeah, I probably am, and I wear that title proudly. Nothing gets through my office. I make everything come through my office so that I can make sure every charge is accounted for before it gets transmitted. And so I do everybody's reporting. So, but that's how it gets done here. And, but that's my pet peeve, and that's what I do. So, but every clerk is going to have that, and it's going to be different. And that's why I think, as a collection, 159 of us with each of our passions and each of our pet peeves, you have such a wonderful group.
Yeah, and we do. Georgia's got a great group of clerks. Because of our structure, depending on who you talk to, some people say that our Constitution actually is a unified judiciary, but it doesn't act that way, right? We're very non-unified when it comes to even court technology and processes. Like you said, each clerk's office in Georgia, has the authority to make their own decisions and to do things what's best for their county, because every county is not the same.
Well, one of it is you got the separation of power, and that's an important thing. And I think having that separation of power, where you have the elected clerk, you have your elected judges, and then you have the integrity of the record. Each one of us, the judges and the clerks separately, are responsible to our voters. Right. And so the record stands for itself. You don't want the clerk an employee of the judiciary.
No, and it's funny, I talk to people all the time about clerks, and they'll say, oh, they work for the judges, right? I'm like, no. Now, in some courts, maybe, but not elected clerks.
Not in Superior. I can remember saying to one of my chief judges, I said, what's the difference with you? Every other class of court gets to pick their clerk. And I said, but yeah, you're stuck with me.
The voters picked me the same way they
exactly. I'm appointed to my state and my magistrate. I said, but that's actually by local legislation in operation here, that the Superior Court does that. So I said, but, the Superior Court judge has no choice. They're just stuck with us.
Yeah, that's true. For better or worse, right?
For better or worse. I try to make that a pleasant experience for them.
Well, you've had a lot of judges who've stuck around for a long time, so
yes,
I think that says something about you. How many do you have now in the Griffin Circuit?
I have 5 Superior Court judges, one state court judge locally in Fayette County, and then I have 4 magistrate. So I have 5. I have 10 judges every day, plus David.
Plus, oh, that is a lot of judges.
Yeah,
That is a lot of judges.
that's a
But
lot
you've
of
got
folks.
some great ones. You've had
Yes,
some great judges come
I
through there.
had
You've
some.
got some great ones
Yes,
that are still around. And
yes,
you have, so you back up to when e-filing became mandatory about 6 years ago. Are any of
yes,
your Superior Court judges from that time still there?
yes. Judge Sams is still here. Judge Ballard is still here. Judge Coker,
Yep.
and I'm not sure. Yeah, Miller came after that, and Judge Cruiser came after that.
That's right.
And Judge Thompson's still here.
Yep.
As well.
It's a good group.
Good group.
You know, you talk about criminal data, and we could spend 4 hours talking about that. And everybody,
yeah.
all of our listeners would just turn it off because they're like, "What are they talking about?"
Especially if you and I get going.
Yeah, but give us just a quick overview on one, the importance of accurate criminal data, right, to society as a whole, and then 2, why is that difficult to do? Like, what are the different factors that go into making that a difficult process?
Well, the criminal data comes. There's so many hands that touch it. For one, so I've got a data exchange that works in my magistrate for the arrest warrants. Mm-hmm. So when that arrest warrant is issued, then that information bifurcates and it goes to my magistrate court and it goes to the sheriff and waits for the body to actually come to the jail.
Right.
So because that's an automated process, then you have less opportunity to make a mistake.
Yeah.
So when the jail gets it, and then they send it over back to us, and then again, electronically, and then by the time it gets accused or indicted by the DA or the solicitor. So since I have a state court, I have a solicitor. So when now our accusations and indictments are still manual, but filings, subsequent filings are now electronic. But that data that comes in is, the less you touch it by hand, then the less opportunity you have for a human to make a mistake.
Right.
But if there is a mistake, you know where it happened. So there's accountability. And not that you're trying to point fingers or do anything like that. You're just trying to, where to go back to get it fixed.
Right.
So it's so much more helpful to the agencies and the players having it this way. It allows it to move faster, less likely to be a mistake. And if there is, we know where to correct it. And then transmissions go smoothly. Up to the state when we get to the point of a final disposition.
So you've got, in one example, you've got 3 different bodies, if you will. You've got the warrant, which explains the charges, right? The potential charges, the alleged charges. Then you've got, let's say it's an indictment. You've got the indictment. What did the prosecution team decide to move forward with formally?
Correct. They may have altered those charges, because once the warrants are executed, the warrants are dead. Yep. They have no more life. It now goes to the prosecutor to decide whether or not they want to move forward on those charges or amend those charges and move forward with something else. So they can dismiss, upgrade, downgrade, whatever they want to do, and then move forward with an indictment. And so that's all the arrest warrant did was arrest the person.
Right.
That's all it did.
Yep.
So the charging document is the accusation or indictment.
And then you've got, once the case is heard and then you have the disposition, those charges could end up being different than what was on the accusation or indictment.
It can. Now I will say in Fayette County, that's very rare that something gets changed actually in court, the day of court, but that it can happen. You're absolutely right. And so which is why I'm that GCIC police.
Yeah.
I make everything come back to me and match back up. And my solicitor and district attorney, they work very well with helping me match those. So we have a reconciliation form that they will fill out for me and file with me. So if there's any change in any charge at any point, then I get a little arrow how to do it. So they let me know.
What you don't want, right? What you don't want is, somebody applying for a job and there's a background check ran on them and it returns some charge that maybe was actually dismissed later.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And we're also trying to catch those that if they're null prost, which is a dismissal at the indictment level, or if it's amended, those amended charges will still mess up an employment, because if we don't restrict the amended charges, because we can do that now. Yep. And then those show on a background. So we're working real hard to make sure that when they say it's null prost, when it's amended, that everything in that cycle gets restricted.
Yeah, which is important if you're trying to get a job, of course. And it's also important if you have a judge in Cobb County who has a defendant in front of them, that judge needs to know the criminal history of that individual when they're deciding on sentencing.
And it's very important if it was dismissed in magistrate court because you're innocent and there wasn't enough probable cause. So you want to make sure all of that gets restricted so it doesn't mess up the rest of your life.
Yeah. Well, we won't put everybody to sleep. We'll move on to, although you and I could talk about that all day.
I know.
What has been, and if I had to guess what the answer would be to this question, there's a couple things I would guess, but I'm going to ask you. What has been the biggest challenge of your career, and what did you learn from it? And thinking about clerk career.
My clerk career, the biggest challenge was walking into the Fayette County Clerk's office on day one. Now, you got to remember that was January 1, 2001, and finding a completely paper-based office and wondering what and how to convert that into a digital office. That has been my biggest challenge, and we have taken it on. That's one of the reasons why I pushed so hard for e-filing. But part of that was, you got to remember, I also do real estate. So I have the property records and digitizing all of that. And in Fayette County, we are also one of the few counties in Georgia that wasn't burned by Sherman. So I have my pre-Civil War data, goes back to 1823. All of that has been digitized. It's available on our website for your perusement. So just getting all of that done and a program written so that you could do that from home. So that was done early in my career. I want to say 2004. Yep. I worked with a vendor to do that, which was amazing that we did it, because during COVID, I was one of the few clerk's office that didn't have to open to the public because everything was digital.
Yep.
So that was a huge challenge. And then digitizing just my courts. So, and that's not complete yet. I have everything civil. I have everything in state court. We're still working on the criminal, but that's a challenge because as we go backwards in that, we're also checking off everything in GCIC to make sure that that person's criminal history is correct. So we're doubling up on that one.
Yeah.
So, and I have paper records in criminal that go back to 1965.
Wow. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
What are you most proud of in your, how many years in the clerk's office now?
This will be my 24th year.
So what are you most proud of in those 24 years?
Come on, e-filing.
I swear, everybody, I didn't tee that up.
Are you kidding? House Bill 126 and 127. It allowed for e-filing and e-recording. We built the e-recording platform in this office as well. So the first deed was recorded in Fayette County electronically, as well as civil. So we have a lot to be proud of here in Fayette County. And so those two things I'm really proud of. I'm proud of our arrest warrant platform that we have. And then outside of this office, I was chairman of the retirement fund for 10 years. And we saved that from going under my watch. We also in 2009, when I was working on e-filing, I was having legislation passed that changed some of the rules in our retirement fund. And we nearly doubled. We went from 64 million to 118 million in 10 years.
Wow.
So not too bad. Just with some investment strategy changes.
That's definitely something to be proud of. That was what years were you?
Yes.
What years were you?
I was there from 2009 until 2018.
That's right. That's a long time. Most people don't last that long
Mm-hmm.
on there.
Yeah. Well, once our investment capital started, just it's on a trend upward, and even now, Rhett Walker's our chairman, and he's got it. It's smooth sailing.
Yeah, shout out to Rhett Walker, one of my favorite people. Just unapologetically himself. He's the clerk in Dodge County, right?
Yes. He was in my clerk class, so we came in together.
So you've got your DNA all over his clerkhood.
Yes, I do.
What do you moving into this final question, which I always love to ask and love to hear what people have to say about it. But when it's all over and you're retired, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want your constituents to remember you? How do you want your team and staff to remember you? What do you want that legacy to be?
Well, I hope that I was helpful. And when they came to the clerk's office, they found us helpful, responsive, and they got what they needed. That's the most important thing to me. And yes, all of this electronic filing, that's icing on the cake. But how people are treated is more important to me. And I hope people remember that I treated them well.
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, I think you're one of the most passionate people I know. You never just go to work and go through the motions. You are invested in that day. You're invested in every person that you talk to. And you look around your office. I mean, when I first started going into your office 10 years ago, there's still people in that office who were there 10 years ago. And that doesn't happen unless there's leadership of great quality in that office.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Do you still have the big map outside of your office?
I do. I do. I sure do. I keep up with everybody in Georgia.
Now, is it, which days did you used to do donut days? Was that Friday?
That's Thursdays. Thursday's cake day.
Thursday's cake day.
Thursday's cake day. See, Monday, everybody's still recovering from the weekend.
Yep.
Tuesday's Monday.
Yeah,
I mean, you might as well just go ahead and say Tuesday's Monday. Wednesday's hump day.
That's right.
So you're making it halfway. Friday's beer day because weekend's here. There was nothing for Thursday. So we dubbed it cake day, and we bring in goodies on Thursday.
Well, the next time I come visit, you will be on a Thursday.
Yeah, most people come visit on Thursdays.
Well, Sheila, I really appreciate your friendship and your leadership and the mentorship you provided me when I was early on in our career and our company's career. You mean a lot to us, and I really appreciate you joining this podcast today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thank you for the time. And let me tell you, GreenCourt will always be right here with me.